They'll blanket you in Wi-Fi and profit off the radiation. Congregation collecting the people for that Satan. I keeps it blazing, cause I can read between the lines. I ain't blind, we unwind what they're really saying. Genetically modify what you're tasting. Don't need that cottage promise, so now you live up in your mom's basement. Redesign time so your mind is always wasted. Program to crave the basics. Keep the beta in stasis. Pay the state, kid. You're in debt for being born. Messengers are more than just the price for being warned. Don't be alarmed. Disconnect from their machinations. Stop subscribing to the folly of all nations. Bone breaking ain't the answer, cause they seek the ownership of souls. Spread the seeds and watch them grow. Break the chains of control. Break the chains of control.
Sweet eternal balance of all that is good, true, and beautiful, friends. Rogueways is so very excited to welcome our guest tonight, as he has spent more time directly living alongside, swimming with, communicating with, and observing humpback whales than nearly any other living person on the planet. A master certified scuba diver who has taught and dove all over the world, from Thailand to the Mediterranean to the Gulf of Mexico, a teacher of English in foreign countries, a ship captain, the host of Not New Releases, and now on to the grandest adventure of all, being a parent to two beautiful sparks of soul embodied in human form. He's the teacher, the traveler, the farseer, the father, and the whale whisperer, my brother and hero, Brandt Brown of Not New Releases. How are you doing tonight?
Wow. You know, if everybody should just aspire to be on your show so that they can hear you give them an introduction like that. That is amazing. That's probably the longest string of nice things that anybody has ever said to me. I'm doing really well. I'm very excited to be on here. I'm very excited about this subject that we're going to talk about, and it is a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yes. You should just print that out and then give it to Allegra and be like, here, read this to me every day.
I want to wake up and have that said to me.
Yes. See, and then she'll come on. She does all this lovely art behind you, and she can come on, and then I'll have one for her too, and you guys can just read it to each other.
Yeah, when we renew our vows, you can just give that to us as a gift, and we'll do that.
That's awesome. I love it. Well, before we get started, I want to remind people to go to rogueways.org for my newest book, All Endings Are Beginnings, as well as tarot readings, spiritual guidance, orgone, crystal jewelry, and consultation. And also check out Not New Releases right now. It's on every podcast app, but especially the episode where Brandt was nice enough to invite me to talk about my favorite movie ever, The Neverending Story. Go check that out right now. You'll absolutely love that break from the sort of darkness and gloom of social, political, just BS, and you can just listen and remember and have that nostalgia and that feeling of our childhood. It's really great. I love it.
Yeah, that was kind of the point. First of all, the episode that you and I did together is, if not the top downloaded, it's in the top 2 downloaded. It's one of the most popular ones.
It's because Artax traumatized everyone. It wasn't just
That's
me.
True. Everybody who's seen that movie has a connection. But really, I got the idea. Podcasts are obviously really popular. It's like everybody is doing one, which is fine, and that's good. It's I feel like the more content out there, you can pick what you want to listen to and, find what grooves you on. But I was at work and I was listening to podcasts, and some of them were just kind of foul or not safe for work. So I wanted to have something that, if somebody does swear, I bleep it out so you can listen to it at work. But I also just didn't want to criticize things all the time. There are so many podcasts, and I listen to them, so I'm not putting them down, that just pick out what's wrong with movies, or what's wrong with these actors, or why this movie doesn't work. And I really wanted to go back to movies that moved us as kids, or that we connected to. I have a really good co-host, my best friend that I've known since middle school, Nino, and he feels the same way. And so it's fun talking about movies, and we rarely go the beginning of the movie is this, and we talk through to the end. It's more whatever stream of conscious comes based off of these movies. So that's also fun as well. So we really enjoy making it, and I like that people are enjoying it. So it's fun all around.
It is super fun. I love it. I was just listening to I can't remember what episode it was. You guys were talking about Johnny Depp a lot, and Johnny Depp? No, not Johnny Depp. Keanu Reeves. And oh my God, this is how bad I am. We were just talking before the show about how men remember names of movie stars and stuff, and girls don't. Here we are doing it again. But
Keanu Reeves in Point Break came out in
Thank you.
1991. His co-star was Patrick Swayze,
There you go. That's
directed by
it.
Catherine Bigelow.
I was just listening to that episode and I was like, this is awesome. I just love like remembering this because I also have forgotten so much of it that I'm like, what? Oh yeah, it's like that. It's just fun.
Yeah.
It's a fun
Yeah.
podcast. So yeah, hopefully people go check it out. And I see some people are hopping from YouTube over to Rockfin. That's awesome. Rockfin is the place to be. We are going to be on YouTube the whole time this episode because I don't think YouTube would have a problem with us talking about whales and pull the episode or dig me, but you never know. So
I don't know.
We're gonna try
I don't know.
it.
They're pretty controversial beings.
Well, I was going to ask you, Brandt, if this is the pointless question of the episode.
Okay.
If a tree fell in the forest on Elon Musk, would the trees shout for joy?
I mean, they'd get pretty musky.
Ooh. But
I think that if a tree fell in the forest, and wait, nobody's there to see this happen?
Sorry, yes, that's a crucial part of the setup.
Okay. Elon Musk is walking through the forest, a tree falls on him, nobody sees it.
Yes.
I just think his regeneration chamber produces another one and he comes back out and nobody would be the wiser.
That's a really good point. Just version 52.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he obviously has one of those.
Each time he gets a more chiseled jaw somehow.
It makes little minute refinements that you wouldn't notice, but if you look through a catalog of his profile pictures, you'll start to see a change.
It's serious. It's like him and most famous people. You look at them when they started and where they're at now, and you're like, okay, clearly there was many things happened between here and there. If it's even the same person.
Ooh.
All right. So we're gonna start with whale. I just want to say how excited I am for this episode because I spent years hearing you tell me about whales and swimming with them and snorkeling with them before I finally did it myself. And you know, the people listening to this, I know we're both gonna probably push you to go actually be with the whales by the end of this because you can't.
Yes.
You can watch this and you can see the pictures in the video and whatever we're gonna do in this episode and hear Brandt talk about all these amazing things about whales. Nothing's ever gonna be as good as you seeing them in their natural habitat. But I do want just for you to tell people how you would even have come to get involved with whales. Like, it seems like my dream job when I was a kid, if you would have told me that you could get paid to go swim with whales, I would have been like, that's what I'm gonna do. But you actually did it.
Yeah. And that was never the starting point either. Like, it would have been awesome if my high school counselor would have been, you know, you don't really seem like a guy who's going to go to college and retain knowledge and have a professional, you know, academic job. So instead, what you should do is teach English for a couple of years in Istanbul and then go to Thailand and learn how to dive and become an instructor and then work on a dive boat and then meet a guy who owns a company, who had at that point owned a company for like 22 years that had been going to the Dominican Republic, snorkeling with humpback whales. And then you should do that for like 11 years.
Yeah.
If he had told me that, then that's what I would have done.
Yeah.
But I ended up doing it anyways. But it was all, like I said, it wasn't a plan. It wasn't even something that I knew existed. And even when I was working on the boat where it was a scuba dive boat. It was a live aboard. So we would take guests out for a week and go scuba diving in different places in the Turks and Caicos. And he chartered the boat for 3 months out of the year. And instead of diving, we're now going to this place to go snorkeling with humpback whales. And even then, the first time that we did it, I was kind of apprehensive about it because when you're diving, when you're scuba diving, you know, of course you're in another area. This isn't ours. So we need to be respectful, and you are, and you don't touch any of the coral and you don't touch the bottom, and you just kind of are peaceful and you just watch things happen. And they're fish and they forget, supposedly, you know, so they don't know that they know that you're there, and then they swim away and they forget that you're there. So as much as you're leaving a very minimal impact if you're doing it correctly. But when I heard that we were going to the mating and calving grounds of the Atlantic humpback whale, and we were going to be getting into the water with them, like I said, my first response was, I don't want to do that. That seems super intrusive. And can't they just have an area where nobody bothers them? Can't we just give them this like protected little 90 square mile area where nobody can go in? One of the things that I really quickly realized was, one, the guy that I worked for, his name is Tom Conlon. He runs a company called Aquatic Adventures. By far the most knowledgeable person on humpback whales on the planet. and everything I know, I learned from him. And he really worked hard with the Dominican Republic government to set up this protected area, made it so that getting a license to go in was really difficult. Not anybody can do it. The people that did or were able to go had to be trained, and you know, so there were a lot of things in place to make sure that we left as little impact as possible. And then once I saw the technique that he had kind of come up with to interact with the whales, which is a very passive, let them come to you, then I was sold. You know, it was the exact opposite of what I thought it was going to be, which was we're just going to barge in there and jump in with them, and people are, you know, going to be partying and stuff like that. So it was a much more naturalistic, get them used to you. If they want to interact with you, that's awesome. If they don't, well, we'll just sit back and watch. And both happened. But once that first season was over, I was like, this is what I want to do. So I kind of angled myself in with him, got in good, and was able to do it for over a decade.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. And it seriously, like, you would even come back and tell us, like, I swim with whales, like that. And I don't know. I just think in my brain, I couldn't imagine that it was as cool as it really was. And like you said, you know, that it was as respectful as it was. Because you see, first of all, like the worst scale possible is putting animals into like a cage in like SeaWorld or whatever, right? Like someone was just telling me a story of like a baby humpback in SeaWorld. And I was like, no, like, there's nothing good about this. It's awful. It's horrible. And then the better, but still feels icky to me as people who go out chasing, you know, the whales, or like baiting them almost, like here's some free like food or action of some kind that you like, and like getting them to come in and then touching them and stuff. And I'm like, that doesn't feel very good to me either. And then, you know, you told me exactly what you just described about Tom's method with aquatic adventures, and I was like, that's really amazing, because he's not only treating them really well, but he's working to protect them even more and more and more all the time. And the boat itself was very eco-friendly and cool too.
Yeah. So, and that was kind of an important part of it, because, and I want to say this the correct way, the boat was eco-friendly because they had to sell that to the guests. You know, it wasn't like from the top down, we're going to be eco-friendly, and so, you know, that's the way we're going to do business. It was more, we're going to have a bunch of guests on that are really concerned about this, so we need to make it to their standards, which I think is important. I think that shows that consumers have that ability to change products or how things are run by just, you know, their wants. And we kind of knew the guest line in that. But it was such a hard job to explain to people. And I always got a little self-conscious about it. Like whenever I wasn't working, because it was like 3 months, it was very intensive, because there's a specific amount of time that they're in the area that they are, which is about 90 miles off the coast of the Dominican Republic. And so we'd be there from like mid-January to like mid-April, 5.5 days out of the week. We'd come back into port, the guests would get off in the morning, clean the boat up, the new guests would arrive that night. We'd leave, you know, around 10 or 11 o'clock at night. It took about 12 hours to get out there, 12 or 13 hours, depending on conditions. And then, you know, we'd have half a Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So there was so much time spent doing that when I got off the boat at the end of that, and I would be back home or visiting people, and somebody would ask what I do, and like I would feel weird about saying, oh, I swim with humpback whales.
Yeah.
Because I never wanted to sound braggy, and it always incited conversation, which is fine. But I don't know, it took me a while to get used to it, to be like not self-conscious about it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I even trying to tell people, like, you know, the times I've been able to travel to really cool places, I feel like, how do you say this without sounding like you're just like, oh, well, one time I was at the top of Machu Picchu and whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, it's hard.
It's like you're the person that, excuse me, that posts on Instagram actual pictures, not because you want, you know, fanfare from it, but you're just like, look how beautiful this is. And then somebody who doesn't know you looks at it and goes like, oh, look at this show off. Like, oh, I went to all this amazing places. I did this amazing thing. And so it's trying to keep that in check and be, respectful of the job that you're doing and not oversell it, like, oh, I play with the stars and I, do this magical thing. But at the same time, like, it is a really magical thing. So, it's being grounded in that as well.
It is pretty amazingly magical. I know we're going to get into some of the stories that are so cool that really point to how amazing it is. But I think it's cool too, and I think we've already said it a couple times, but just that you have more experience. There's people who are like specialists, so they're like marine biologists, and humpback whales are their specialty, and they don't even get to experience being face to face with or spending time with a humpback, let alone the amount of time you've spent doing that. And so just even if you were an idiot, which you're not, you're an extremely intelligent person, but even if you were an idiot, you'd have to pick up like a lot, but you,
Right.
being someone who's so observant too, it's like you automatically are going to have this perspective and amount of information that they're never gonna get.
Yeah. Well, and it was really neat because we eventually, Tom hooked up with the founder and some of the people that work at the Center for Coastal Studies, which is on Cape Cod, right? That's in Maine, in Cape Cod. And they're a great organization, and they do a lot in not tagging whales, but identifying whales. They have a really prolific fluke identification system that they've got going. They do whale counting. They have lineage of, grandmothers, mothers,
Wow.
babies, as far as the humpback whales. So it made sense to kind of team up with them. And maybe it was 5 or 6 years in, we finally got some of them were able to come down onto the boat on, for no cost. And it was the first time that they were able, they had seen when humpbacks dive, they're called humpbacks because they hump as they go down. They were able to see the fin, the dorsal fin. They were able to see the flukes, sometimes the fin, the pectoral fins, but never the whole whale. Surely, definitely not like being in the water with them. So just watching the people that had been more academic about their knowledge about humpback whales get into the water, and every time they came out, it's like, I just never knew. This is how and it's like you said at the very beginning, you can watch a video, there's amazing stuff, like Blue Planet 2 has amazing underwater footage of humpback whales, but it's not the same.
No.
It just can't be.
No. I was like crying.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't have any way to process this experience at all. It's too big.
There was now I'm going to get into story mode here real quick, but I will never forget, there was a man who was on our boat, and he came out because his wife, it's like on his wife's bucket list, and he was an older gentleman, like in his 60s, deathly afraid of the water, couldn't swim, but he came out because his wife, it's something that she wanted to do. And so the whole week he was out there, and like before we'd go out on the boat and after we'd get off the boat, I'd kind of go out on the back of the deck. You can picture it, but on the boat that we had, there was a back little swimming deck kind of.
It's like a little platform that's even with the water.
Yeah, exactly. And we had a line going off of it, and he'd have his life jacket on, and I would just like sit in the water, and I just like worked for days for him to try to even get his face, because people have a fear of that. Even if you're comfortable in the water, like putting your face in the water can be, challenging for some people. He was terrified. Again, he couldn't swim. He didn't like the water. If it was up to him, he wouldn't have been on that trip. So all week, definitely not pressuring him, but just like, I would sit next to him and I'd be like, if you want to get in the water, this is a really good encounter. The water's not too rough. Again, for people listening, we are 90 miles out in the middle of the ocean. So there's no
ocean. Yeah.
It's just ocean. There's no land anywhere. There's no protection. So even if it's a little bit windy, it's a little bit rocky. And we just had to work with those conditions. But anyways, and he never wanted to, but then the next morning, be like, I think today's the day. We'd go the whole day. He never wanted to. And then it sounds like I'm making it up, but on the very last day, we're leaving. It's Thursday. We're leaving Friday morning, first thing when the sun comes up. And we've had this just amazing day. And his wife's happy. Everybody's happy. We've got like 10 people on the tender that we're on. And we're on our way back to the boat. And as we're going, a mother and calf come up right next to us, and they're kind of keeping speed, kind of following us. And Denise, she was one of my coworkers. She was driving the tender. She started to slow down, and they slowed down. And then she stopped, and they stopped. And the sun is kind of setting, and we have to get back to the boat because we can't be out there when it's dark because there's coral heads everywhere. And she pulled me back, and she's like, just ask him one more time. So I sat down next to him and was like, this is a really good encounter. The sun is setting, the water's really calm. And he's like, okay. And he grabbed onto my arm, and everybody got ready. But they had all, I don't know, because I was talking to Denise. While I was talking to her, the people on the tender kind of talked amongst themselves and decided that they weren't going to go in the water. So he thought everybody was going. We slid in as quietly as possible, but he kind of flopped in because he was scared. He was death grip on my arm. And I'm swimming him up to the whale, and I can see her underwater, and I can see the calf down there, and I'm trying to position myself in the right place. And he's like looking around above, he doesn't want to put his chin down. And I point down, and he puts his face down, and as soon as he sees it, he just like, he's still holding on, but that death grip is just like, now he's like barely holding on, and his whole body relaxes, and we're floating over the mother and the calf, and he's breathing normal. And the calf peeks out from underneath the mom and comes up right in front of us. And then she comes up right in front of us, and she kind of does her little pectoral thing right by us, and she swims away. And he got back on the boat, and he was crying, and I was crying, and everybody on the boat was crying. And like there was a big applause, and that's just one story, but it was so, like, it changed his life. Like, just, I'm sure he's still afraid of the water. In fact, that night he said that he almost pooped his pants. He didn't say poop, but for like that 90 seconds that we were in the water, or 2 minutes, he was completely calm, and he was completely focused on what he was doing. And it was just, it's stuff like that. There's so many stories of like people just being calm, and it's so easy to respect them because they're massive, and there's just, you don't want to make any noise because you want them to be peaceful.
Oh my God. I almost cried
No.
when you were telling that story. It's so beautiful. It's so nice of you to like help him too, to get to that point. It's like, he's never going to forget that, that changed, like you said, his whole life, and you were an instrumental part of it. But I think the whales were too. And this is where I'm like totally off in the world of speculation or whatever, but I feel like they know. I'm sure they can hear the heartbeat,
sure.
And like what, the acoustics are insane. Like,
yeah,
I'm sure they were like, oh, he's kind of like scared or whatever, and then they like felt him relax too, or heard him relax, and then like purposely went up and were like, let's give him a little brush.
I don't doubt that for a second. It's like, it's not even an assumption. They sing and they vocalize. They're incredibly vocal whales or sea mammals, and they can hear for like thousands of miles. So if you can sing and 1,000 miles away another whale can hear your song, then there's no doubt in my mind that they can hear me breathing when I'm right above them, or even people's heartbeats, going fast or going slow. That just makes sense to me. And just again, for people, when I say right above them, so we're out on the Silver Bank, and the deepest point is 100 feet. It's this natural bank, 90 miles off the coast. So yes, we're in the middle of nowhere, but it goes from like 3,000 feet deep to suddenly 100 feet deep. And there are some places where it's like 20 feet deep or 30 feet deep. It just kind of depends. So right above them, they're probably 50 feet down, and then we kind of position ourselves there. So we're not right on top of them, but in a space.
It's crazy too, because they're bigger than you think, even when you can think about how long they are. And maybe you can remind us how long they are. They're huge, but when you see them, you're like, whoa, like, that's big.
Well, yeah. Well, and that's the thing. So typically, I think they say on average, the average humpback whale is between 30 and 45 feet adult. And generally, they're about 1 ton per foot. So 30 tons to 45 tons. And they also don't look as long because they're kind of banana shaped when they're in the water.
Yeah.
They're never really stretched out. So even then, they're kind of curled up, and they're huge. And like, how often in your life are you 10 feet away, you know, when they come to the surface by you, to a 40-ton animal.
Yeah. It's crazy. Well, speaking of their vocalizations and how good the acoustics are, I want to talk about their song, because that was another thing that like blew me away. It's crazy to me that we don't like teach this in school or something. Like, there's this animal that seems way smarter than humans, and here's one piece of why. Like, what? Tell us about their song.
Yeah. So I guess, so there's going to be some stuff that is academic in what I'm about to say, and then there's some things that we piece together. And anytime I say we, it's like the group that I worked with through Aquatic Adventures and my coworkers. So they have, by recording a bunch of different songs over the years, and I'm not going to get the year right, but I want to say that they first recorded the humpback whale song in the late 70s.
Wow.
But I very much could be wrong about that. It might have been even a little bit earlier. I know that when they did, they put it on a record and it actually sold really well. And I know that they put that record on a satellite that left our solar system like 10 or 20 years ago.
Space whales.
Space whales. But anyways, in the most simplistic way to think about it, if you take a whale song, and let's just say it's approximately 20 minutes, it can be anywhere from 8 to 12 to 15 to 20 minutes, depending on the whale, because they'll sing it faster or slower, depending on the whale. But let's just say, for sake of argument, 20 minutes. It's broken up into 4 different sections. And so let's just say for ease, each section is 5 minutes. That section, and again, sometimes it's slower or faster, is the same for every whale that sings in that body of water. So the whole North Atlantic population of whales, though not every whale does sing, but the ones that do will sing that song. The Pacific humpback whales have a different song. The Indian Ocean whales have a different song. So every group of whale has a different song. But in that population, they all sing the same, excuse me, they all sing the same song. So if you hear that song this year, you can record it and you'll have it. And then next year, they'll sing a different song. And the thing that has changed is, if we say there's A, B, C, and D, A, B, C, and D, A will drop, B will become A, C will become B, D will become C, and then there will be a new 4th part. And there's a new 4th part every year. So every 4 years, I have to look away when I'm doing this, because now I'm doing math and looking at a chart in my head. But basically every 4 years, the song is completely different than it was 4 years ago. But every year, there are similar parts to the year before and the year after.
It's like record keeping. I mean, they're like telling a story of some kind, and they all know it. They're all doing it. They all have it memorized. It's like, it's crazy to me that we're just like, oh, this is dumb fish. Like, and people are like, oh, scientists have discovered that animals think. I'm like, you needed a scientist to tell you that? Like, you're really dumb.
And so that's where, because I think there's benefits to both. I mean, there's obviously some benefits to the academic approach of studying something.
Yes.
And then there's the benefits of like the hands-on, observation and experience and putting those two things together. Because an example of that with this song is, I think it's still kind of taught that the song, most researchers think that the song is a mating ritual or a mating call or something to do with mating. And that's possible. I will never know, and you will never know. Nobody was ever really going to know. It doesn't make sense to me, because they sing it when they're not mating. Like where we were, that is the mating grounds. The humpback whales come down, like the males come down to mate. The females either come down to mate or give birth. That's the only reason they go down there. There's no food. They don't eat for months and months and months at a time. So that's really the only reason you would go down there.
Yeah.
If you wanted to eat and be lazy, you'd stay up north and do that. But it's possible that it's for mating, but it doesn't really make a lot of sense, because I've seen humpback whales, and they also say that that it's only the male that sings. And the only reason they say that is because the whales that they've been able to find and then identify the gender have been males. So there's a big gap that's being made. Whoa! I just ripped off my headphones. Sorry.
You're not the first.
Got all animated. But I've seen I've definitely seen a male humpback whale with a mother and a calf following it as it was singing. Now that mother doesn't want to mate. She just gave birth. She doesn't have the power really. I mean, if she gets pregnant again, that's really going to be hard on her body. So, but she's still hanging around because he's singing. Um, I've been with a whale, or we've been with a whale that was singing, found a female to be with, and he was all happy. And then the next day we saw that same whale, and he was singing, but he was singing much slower. And the female was gone. So we were like, oh no, he's sad. And so that's what I mean. It's like, well, they only sing to mate because birds sing to mate, and so that's why anybody will sing to mate.
Yeah, well, and it's just everything in our like conception is like it's either like this superstitious thing, you know, with humans at least, like you're stupid, you're superstitious, or you're mating, and then we like project that onto animals. We're like, well, you can't be superstitious, so 100% of what you do is either eating or mating, like
right.
And I'm like, that's so weird to me to just like reduce them to this and not think beyond that, like, oh, maybe they're like tracking their like pathways or their patterns, or like here's where it's good to eat or not, and who knows how much information is in that, because their way of communication would be totally different if they're melons or whatever can like receive sound in this way that we can't. Like, who knows how that's like coming in and what it's carrying with it. This is just a random thing that is true. You know, Johnny and his guy that he was working with, Felix, Fast Forward, they were making these really cool songs together, whatever. One of them, they wanted to use whale sounds. 100% of the time that they like would open up the whale sound, it would crash the whole computer. Like, that's how much information is in it, even on a computer.
Wow.
So something's going on there, right?
Yeah, and I think also, just as humans, we tend to simplify things, and maybe that's to help us understand it. But it's like we take an animal and we observe its behavior, and then we make these very simple conclusions as to why it's doing whatever it is that it's doing, because that makes sense to us at the time. And that's kind of how science works. It's like you observe something, you write it down, and this is the truth right now, until science tells you something else, and then that becomes the new truth. And people use science as this like end all, when it's an evolution. Science has been changing since people created the word science, and humpback whales is a great example because it always changes. And every time you're with these animals, and when we see the whale song, I don't know how many people know this, but whales don't have vocal cords. So that song that they are replicating every part of, that changes every 4 years, is just little like squeaks of air in their hollow chambers of their body, moving from one pocket to another pocket in their body. And how do they know how to do that? How can they hear a song and then replicate it? And which whale changes? Because every year it changes, you know, one part drops off, a new part comes in. Who's the whale that puts the new part in?
Yeah.
And how do all the other whales know, okay, that's the new song?
That sounds like some collective mind going on. Like, because, yeah, what they're like, they have whale voting. Like, it's Fred this year, guys. We all decided. Like,
yeah. He's got a really good tune that he's been practicing. So he's going to insert that into part D. We're going to lose A. Everything is going to shift down a little bit, which is also possible. One of the things I love, and I used to say this, you know, on the boat, if you came out with us, you know, we'd go out during the day to do the whale experience. Then we'd come back, have dinner, and then there'd always be a presentation. And I really liked this. And I would say one of my favorite parts about humpback whales and their song specifically is that we will never, ever know. And I think there's beauty in that, because I don't think it's for us to know. I think it's awesome that we can observe it. I think it's great that you can go online and listen to it, but we're never going to be able to decipher it. It's in my opinion, at least, it's not a Rubik's Cube that we need to figure out. And then once we do, the secrets are unlocked to us, because it's not for us, you know? And I like that. I like thinking about that. I like the idea that that is their thing and they know why they do it, and we can enjoy it, but we're never going to know why.
I love it. I love the mystery of that. And I know, like, when I was in the water, and I'm sure you've had this experience too, unless I'm just really weird. But especially one time when this baby was like under its mom, but like looking right at us, and I was like, it's looking at me. But it was like clicking or something, and I could
Yeah.
feel it hit my body. So I was like, it's like talking to me.
Yeah. So that's the thing. It's like some whales sing, or some humpback whales sing, but all of them vocalize. I mean, it's impossible, especially once you've been doing it for a while, to go into the water in the silverbank. And anytime I went down more than 2 feet, I could hear them. If I was ever diving, like sometimes I'd get to be able to, I'd put on a tank and I'd go down to check the mooring line to make sure everything's safe. It was so loud. It was so loud down there. And it wasn't just the song. It's like mothers click to their calves, the calves click back. Males will click when they're coming towards you, or not just necessarily click, but they will do little squeaks and vocalizations, which have nothing to do with the song as well. So there's different forms of communication for sure.
And I didn't plan to tell this story just yet, but just speaking of forms of communication, that same baby whale, like, I was like, I wonder if it's like trying to communicate with me, but it's like, what the hell is that? And I'm like, what the hell is this? Like, we don't know each other. We're just totally different species. And I was like, okay, I'm going to like kick one leg and then see. And I kicked one leg and he like moved his back fin or whatever. And I was like, dude, maybe it's real. I was like, I'm going to move my left hand and see if he does. And he moved his left fin. I was like, dude,
Right.
I moved my right hand and he moved his right fin. And I was like, oh my God. And then he like came up. I don't know if you remember this, but he like came up and came right up to my face. And I was like, oh my God, like this baby whale is like still way bigger than anything you've ever seen in your life.
Yeah, it's a calf,
baby.
but it's still bigger than you.
Coming right
It's still
for
like
me.
2 tons.
Yeah.
Right.
And I was just like in this moment of like, oh my God, I'm having this communion with this whale. Like, this is amazing. But then at the last minute, I was like, is it going to hit me? And when I got like that like fear of like, oh my God, it's going to like run into me, it like veered off and like went the other way. And I was like, oh my God, I like understood that I was scared and it gave me like more space. Then I came up and you were like, Lindsay! And I was like way far away from everyone because I wasn't paying attention.
I remember
that. Sorry. It was
No,
amazing.
Yeah. That's one of the things. And it's so hard because there's these guidelines that are set for safety.
Yeah.
Now, I can tell you in my 11 years of doing it, I've never seen anybody get injured by a humpback whale. I've seen them. I mean, they will play chicken with you, but they always turn. One of the hardest things, there's a progression that happened while I was out there during that period of time. When I first started working there, my main goal was to obviously find the whale, and then you do a signal to let other people know that they can come into the water with you, and then protect all the people from the whale.
Yeah.
That was my whole thing. And so there's going to be a point to the story because you're tense.
Yeah.
I was tense. I was fearful. Anytime a whale, like a calf, would get curious or frolicky and want to play with us, I would just be like, everybody back, watch out. Because I didn't want anybody to get hurt. And it took a couple years for me to relax and start to trust. And I'm not joking. Once I did that, my encounters and the encounters of people that were with me, if I was the in-water guide, exponentially improved to the point where I would just like, because people are going to react differently. I've got 10 other people behind me, and my goal really is to keep them safe. But I knew there's no way that this whale is going to come and touch us.
Yeah.
It's going to come check us out. And I'm going to sit here and be as still as I can and hope everybody else is as well. And we're just going to see how close. Because that's the thing, like on Saturday night when people board the boat and they're all excited and they've never done it, they're like, how close are we actually going to get? I can't guarantee anything, and we never do. We're like, if we have the chance to get into the water with the humpback whale, we will be as close as it lets us get to. There was never a week that we didn't get in the water with the humpback whale, first of all. But you can't say like, we're definitely going to do it. And some weeks were way harder than others. But it's like, if I could be honest with them instead of being an employee, I would say it's going to get closer than you want. You are actually going to want to back up because it's getting so close. And your natural response is going to be fear. And so it's kind of trying to tell people the less afraid of them you are, the better this is going to be. And I can also say in that same vein, anytime we had a boat that had people who had been on previous years in a row, always way better. Because, they kind of knew the system, they knew how to be. they were always way more calm, and we always had better encounters
Yeah.
in that situation.
And just like we
So
were
I
saying,
definitely think,
they can feel it
yeah,
or sense
yeah.
it or whatever. They know.
And excuse me, that way, that when you even started that and you're saying you would do a movement, and there's copycat. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like any infant animal, or child, like there's a mirroring that happens. And I've seen it also in adults too. I would take my fin, and like if an adult was coming up towards me, and I'd take my fin and I would wiggle it back and forth. Nobody can see my foot, but I'm doing it right now.
Yeah.
And they would do, the same thing, and they'd swim by you. And like when you said, oh, I felt it was looking right at me, it's because their eyes are the size of grapefruits. I
Their
mean,
eyes are huge. I was like, this eye
yeah.
is bigger than my head. When one of the moms like was leaving, and she like turned around, and in turning around, she like came really close to me, and her fin was like right under me.
Yeah.
Like however many feet away, and that in itself is crazy. And her eye therefore like went right past my head, and I was like, I'm pretty sure your eye is the size of my face. Like it was insane. The baby like peeked up from behind her to check me out as they were going by. It's like, it's incredible. It's amazing.
And even, it's just, there's so many amazing things about them, but specifically their eye. So first of all, it's huge. It can bulge out of their head, so they can see 360 degrees in any direction. So it's like, if you're right above them, they can see you. If you're behind them, they know where you are, let alone being able to feel you and hear you. They can see you. But it's, every time, it never got old. Anytime a whale would swim past and its eye was open, because sometimes they're closed, sometimes they're called, we call it sleepwalking, where they're resting. So they'll come up to the surface, their eyes will be closed, they'll take a couple breaths, they'll go back down, their eyes are still closed, which is really neat to see as well. But anytime it was open and it'd swim by, it would track you, it would look at you, and then you go to the next person, and you could make eye contact with it. And it was impossible not to feel something. Like there's some animals that you can look at and you're like, yeah, that's an animal. And then there are other, like, think of a dog or something, like there's emotion there. There's thought behind there. It's a very forgiving
soul.
Yeah. There's a very forgiving, gentle look. And it's like, if that's all I did, if my whole life I was just in the water for 10 minutes and a whale swam by me and I got to look it in the eye,
Yeah.
let alone be able to do that. So
yeah,
I don't know.
Super, super amazing. Again, we're going to go into even more detail and stories, but like you basically have to go and do it yourself with aquatic adventures specifically, not just, Brandt doesn't get paid. I don't get paid. We just know that that's the best experience you can have.
Yeah. And I would still be doing that job now. The only reason I'm not is because I have children, and I had to make a conscious decision. I didn't want to be gone for 3 months at a time, and so when my wife was pregnant with our son, our first child, that was the last season that I did it. And he was due in like April or May, mid-May, and I came back in mid-April. So even then, I felt like I was cutting it close. And I was gone during the last 3 months of her pregnancy. So thank you to my wife, because that was very nice. But after he was born, I just couldn't, I didn't want to be gone. So I don't look at it as being sad. Like I just take that away as being like, that was amazing, and now I'm going to do something else that is amazing. But I would still be doing it, because how many people get to do that? And you have to do it. I mean, there's cost to everything in life, and we spend money on certain things. And it's like, I had people that would come on that the first year that I was out there, when I didn't know what I was doing, there was a man who told me that he'd been saving up for 7 years to come out. He lived in Oregon, and it's like, this is what I've wanted to do this since I was a boy. And when I found out that you could, I started saving. I've been saving for 7 years, so it's just stuff like that. It's like, these things can happen. You just have to make that a priority of how to do it, because you kind of touched on it. You can look at a picture, or you can watch a video, and there are some incredible videos, like the cameras that people are using now, and the drone footage especially. It's just incredible, the things that they're able to see. but it's not, even if you're not in the water with them, just being out there on a boat, watching them interact, watching them breach, watching a rowdy group, watching their surface activity. It's like, it can't, there's a feeling that you get that can't be expressed through videos or movies or pictures. And that's really the whole point. Like, that's what I wanted people. Earlier, I touched on that when I first started, my main goal was to make sure people didn't get hurt. By the time that I left, my main goal was that people understood what it was like to be so close to probably the most misunderstood animal that can interact with people. And I knew, and just like being a person that could facilitate that was way more amazing than having the experience with the whales, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
You know, it's like I got to a point where I never took it for granted, and I'm not saying that, but there was a shift in seeing people's reactions and being like, I'm helping them do that. You know, I am in an amazing position to feel out this whale, you know, understand that it's okay for people to get into the water with, and then let people have an interaction or facilitate. I didn't let them, I facilitated an interaction and then saw their reactions afterwards. And that was incredible.
So, one thing I want to say is, can we imagine if 100% of people had this experience? Like, you took someone like Elon Musk or Joe Biden or Trump or whoever who's like totally disconnected from reality and like threw them in the water to like have eye contact with a mother whale. Like, wow, what if the whole world did that? You know, some people are like, oh, they need to smoke a bowl or whatever. I'm like, I think they need to swim with a whale, actually. And then someone in the chat, Love in the Midst, is saying, you know, when your kids are older, you could take them out maybe and do the same thing.
Yeah. Oh, that would be a dream.
Yeah.
Seriously, that would be a dream to bridge that gap and show them that part. That would be awesome. Going to what you're talking about, it would be amazing if everybody could get into the water with them. But I have also been, unfortunately, there have been people that have come out that didn't want that interaction.
Yeah, I don't.
And
get
so
that.
therefore, and therefore didn't have it.
Wow.
And it was clear as day. I don't want to use actual names, but we had a person come out a couple of years in a row, and he would rent the boat for 2 weeks at a time, like all the spots, which was fine. He wasn't the only person that would do that, and then he would have people come on, like we'd be there at the dock welcoming them on, and they didn't even know that it was a whale trip. They just thought they were like on a boat, like a party boat, like a cruise ship.
Jesus.
They're like, wow, this ship's really small. I mean, it wasn't a small ship. You were on it. It's small compared to a party cruise ship, but
I guess it's a big boat.
But it was night and day, the interactions of the week or the weeks when that kind of group was out, that had no interest, that didn't want to do it, that partied all night the night before, and so were hungover that morning. Trying to get them into the water, trying to find a scenario in which they could get into the water was so hard, compared to also, not every year, but most years, we'd have a week where a group of animal communicators would come on. And I can't remember who they went through now. But anyways, it was a group of animal communicators, mostly women, but sometimes men. And those weeks were vastly different than the weeks before. Every night at sunset, they'd go up on the sun deck and they would sing Amazing Grace. And, you know, they were vegan or vegetarian, most of them. And sometimes there were ones on there that could smell that we were cooking meat upstairs, and they'd come up and want some steak or something. But
don't tell the rest.
In general, yeah, exactly. My friend brought me here. I'm not really a vegetarian, but you know what I mean? In general, it was a group of people who their sole purpose was to just have a interaction and commune with the whales. And they'd have those crystal bowls that you hit, and you can make loud sounds if you rub it around, you know, just a bunch of different stuff. And I'm not going to go out and say like those were the best weeks we ever had, but they were way better than the weeks where people didn't want to have that connection. So that's a long-winded way of saying it would be amazing if we got Trump or Biden or Elon Musk out there, but if they didn't want it, I don't think anything would happen.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I know, and you tell me that story about the people who are just don't care and they don't even know where they are, and but like you said, the whales know. Like, they
Yeah.
know. Like, it's not you're observing this difference so starkly, and it's not an accident. And um, but also I can't imagine why you would ever be in a place in your life where you didn't care about that. But there's a lot of
Right.
things I don't understand about people.
I mean,
Um,
if you're quote unquote friends with a multimillionaire and he's just like, hey, I'll pay for you to come down to the DR and we're going to go out on the water. And you're like, sure, all right. You know, like I said, most people had done research and had been planning for years. And this was on their bucket list, or that, there was some kind of big reason why they would come out. And then the people that just, oh, I thought we were just on a party boat and I just want to party. Like trying to get them onto the tender every morning, like, okay, we're going to go out and go see whales now. And like, do we have to leave now? Can't we leave at like lunch?
God.
All right, we can do whatever you want.
I guess it's your thing.
Yeah.
I want to play the song that you sent me of the whales, and I think that you can hear it at the same time if I do it via screen share. So I'm going to see if that, because otherwise I don't know if you can hear it. But let's see. Tell me if you can hear this. I know they'll be able to hear it.
I don't need to hear it because I have them memorized.
Oh, okay. Well, here we go. I'm playing it starting now.
I'm just letting you know I can't hear it.
Oh, okay. All right, that was a minute of whale song. There's 13 more minutes of it. But it's like, it's so weird. Like,
Yeah, you've got there's some deep bass,
yeah.
and then you got those high pitched squeaks. We had a couple on, they were from Iceland, and they were awesome. They came out a couple years in a row as well. And the woman, they were married. The woman had, sorry, I'm not gonna be able to remember if it was brain cancer or a brain tumor. It might have been, it doesn't matter. It was something was going on in her brain, and the doctors told her she had, like a couple months or 6 months to live. She came out. So that's like when I first met her, that was the story. And then she came out the next year, which was awesome to see her. And she like, so when she came out, she's like, every day I'm here, I wasn't supposed to have this day. And they came out like 3 years in a row, I think. But her and her husband 1 year recorded the song. And then the next year they recorded the song again, which was very lucky. I mean, everybody wants to get into the water with a singing whale, but the odds of it are pretty low. So the fact that they did it 2 years in a row was great. But the point of the story is, they had, when I said I memorized it, I was joking. They had memorized it. They could sing it. They could sing 16 minutes of the song and mimic it really well. And so they were able to show us parts of the second year that they were there that were similar to the first year. And one of the things that I recall was there's a part where it really sounded like a motorcycle was revving a couple times. It was like, vroom, vroom, vroom. And they played that part from the year before and the year after. And it was so similar that it was almost like it was from the same recording or the same song, which I thought was, it's just amazing. I don't know. I could talk about the song forever, but just again, when you hear that, imagining that they're, again, don't have vocal cords, they're just squeezing different parts of their body in a specific way to make a specific sound at specific, rhythms. And I don't know, even if you never saw a humpback whale on video, let alone in person, just that information alone, like, I don't know how you could hear that and say, Oh yeah, it's just for mating.
Yeah, it's so weird. It's so weird to me. I love this picture of you. This is my favorite picture of you. I should have pulled out the picture of me. I have a picture. My favorite picture of me is also with a whale on this trip that we keep speaking of, which you had millions of, and I had my one, my one time, which was amazing.
It's more than most.
It's
I
more than
think we,
most.
while you pull it up, I think we used to say, this is a line that I got from Tom, but it's like, if you take all the people that came out with Aquatic Adventures for his, God, it's got to be like 28 or 29 years now, took all those people, and then you took all the people from the other, so that at any one time there were 3 boats out there for that 3-month period of time. We all started the same week, we all finished the same week. There were only 3 boats. I think you had to have, it's like less than 100 people could be on there at one time in this 120 square mile area. Anyways, he's take all the people that went with him, all the people that went with the other 2 boats, all the people, because they also get in the water, I want to say in Tonga. I think Tonga and the Dominican Republic are the only 2 places that you can do it. Take all those people. Take the people that just randomly have been in the water when a humpback whale's gone by, like in Turks and Caicos or in Hawaii. Add all of those people up, and it's probably less than 10,000 people have been in the water with a humpback whale.
Wow.
So you doing it for 1 week is way more than most.
That's amazing. I feel very blessed and lucky, and I feel like we just barely like snuck in because that was it was either the last year or one of the last years that you did it.
Yeah, it was like the second. Yeah, it was very close to the end, and it was also the very last week of the season.
Wow, yeah, it was. That's true. It was amazing. Well, I want to look at some of these pictures too. Did you take all of these?
I took most of them, and once I see them, I'll be able to tell you if I took it or not.
Can you not?
Some have been shared. Some were shared with me with like, you can use this in presentations, stuff like that. I took a majority of them.
You can't see this?
No.
Oh.
I just see my movie 10 VCL media player.
Oh. Hold up.
It's very nice.
Well, that doesn't make any sense to me. What if I close that? Do you see this now? Oh.
I see your face.
Was anyone else seeing the pictures? Come on. Oh, they were, because they were seeing my screen and I was seeing it. Well, anyways,
okay.
Now you can see
yeah,
it, right?
I took that.
Okay. I was showing this picture before of you.
So wait, can you go back for a second?
Yes.
It wasn't this specific whale, but one of the things that I like about this whale, you can see it's doing like a little, we called it like a bubble trail or a bubble line, where they would take a breath, go down, and then usually in like a rowdy group, they'll blow these bubbles as they're moving. And we think that they kind of do it because of it's almost like a smoke screen. The point of sorry, I'm saying a lot of stuff that most people maybe don't know. A rowdy group is when there's a woman or a female calf in heat, and the men can tell, and they want to be as close to the female as possible. The one that's closest to the female is the escort, and all the other males are challengers. And the escort's job is to be as close to that female as possible, because that means that it's his girl. All the other challengers are trying to get closer. So it's this huge race. And we've been with rowdy groups for hours, and then just they slam into each other. They do little chin breaches on top of each other. So anyways, in this picture, this whale is a male and he's blowing a bubble stream. And we think that it's, maybe it cuts off the view of, it's not a great picture because I'm not a great photographer, but there is another whale behind that whale. And so one of our hypotheses is that it cuts the view off.
He's like, you can't see her, haha.
Yeah, it's like putting the smoke screen up if you're trying to get away from people in your car that has the ability to give smoke screens. But what this picture actually always reminds me of is we were in the water, and it was a lone female. She didn't have a calf, so she had gone down there to mate, presumably. And she would come under the group, and she would blow bubbles underneath all of us, and then she would swim away. And then she would come back, and she would blow bubbles, and she would swim away. And she did this for about 45 minutes. We called the other tender to come in, and we started switching out. And for about 2.5 hours, she would go underneath the group, blow a bunch of bubbles, and then swim away. Obviously she was playing with us. I don't think that she was communicating to us. She got the reaction. I think she got the reaction because first of all, you have a whale coming right underneath you. I mean, she was coming right underneath us. Like if I had put my legs down, I could brush her back. So she was probably
Oh wow.
3 or 4 feet. Like we're laying flat on the surface.
Oh my god.
She's like 3 or 4 feet below us, and then she just exhales. So you're kind of like, it's like a geyser almost. And people were flipping out and laughing. And I think that she's like, ooh, she'd go and she'd be gone for like a couple minutes. And then you could see her come back. She'd slowly come back, dive underneath us, come right underneath us, blow her bubbles, and then take off again. So
it's like when you're chasing a toddler, and like they know you're not going to hurt them, but they're still the like,
right. You're right. Yeah, there's that
like,
anticipation.
Yeah.
And that's what it got. People, so we could see her come back, and everybody's like, okay, everybody lay flat, be calm. And there was again a situation where the calmer we were, the closer, because she started off usually like when she first did it, maybe she was 20 feet below us. And so we got this little like champagne effect. And then as we remained calm, she would get closer and closer and closer. It was outstanding.
She didn't want to scare you off too soon. That is
so
fun.
No, it's a little game we played.
I don't think I ever heard that story. I love that. All right, what about this picture?
It's hard to remember all of them. This is one of the first pictures that I ever took, and this was a good example of me saying, I'm not going to be scared.
I'm not going to go.
I'm just because again, I don't know how good the quality is for everybody else, but I can see that you can see the seafloor if you look past the whale.
Oh yeah.
So this is in probably like 80 feet of water. And this is a whale that we were, I kind of positioned myself above her, and she was sleeping. Or we called them sleepers. She'd be down for like 20 minutes at a time, come up, take a couple breaths, and then go back down. And so one of the times, and again, this is another example where she started to come up, and I would tell everybody, it's like, all right, everybody be calm, let her come to you. Don't swim away. Don't do anything crazy. Everybody be calm. All right, here she comes. And we just held our ground, and I just held my ground, and she came right up, like if I'm on the surface, right, and then dipped down, showed her fluke, came around to the side, took a couple breaths, and then went back down.
Wow.
So out of about 150 pictures that I took, this is the
best.
This is the one that worked.
Wow.
But it's hard to see. Again, humpback whales are so crazy looking. It really took me a while to like figure out like where are their eyes and what am I exactly looking at? Like, So you can see a line at the top, that's the mouth that opens up in like a 90-degree angle when they're feeding. And then you've got the chin underneath, and all those bumps are tubercles. Those are where the hair follicles are, because all mammals have hair. That's where their hair is. So each one of those has a little, it's not little actually, it's like 1/4 of an inch thick hair that comes out.
And this is her eye back like here.
Yeah.
Which only
so
looks
again,
kind of small because it's like way back actually in real life.
It's way far back. Like it's right, like if you put them in the perspective of us, like their pectoral fins are their arms and their armpits, it's like right by their armpit kind of.
Like, it'd be like here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it would be that far back. And that was the other thing, like because people assume I was about to touch my screen, like you can see what I'm doing. You just kind of assume that their eyes are up closer. So they'd be like, oh, I can't see, or its eyes were closed. I was like, no, their eyes are open and it was looking right at you. It's just, you get so focused that it takes a while to like zoom out and look at the whole animal.
Yeah.
Because you can see the whale coming towards you and you can be so focused on its head. But now like a 15-ton pectoral fin is going to come, and then 20 feet later its fluke is going to come, and so you have to be aware of all of it. So it takes a while to be able to visually take everything in and make sense of what you're looking at.
Oh my god. Oh, and here, are these all barnacles on his whatever mouth?
Yeah, on the chin plate there. Yeah, they're called acorn barnacles, and they have like a symbiotic relationship with them. The acorn barnacles get to grow there and live and eat food, and they use them as if you can think of barnacles are super sharp. So when they're in rowdy groups or when they're like chin breaching on top of each other, you can also see on the pectoral fin, there's a couple sticking on the bumps there. So they have them on their pectoral fins, they have them on their chin, they have them in their fluke, anywhere where they can breach or slash. And just, it's not necessarily I don't think it's a defense thing. I don't think a lot of creatures attack adult humpback whales
Yeah.
besides man. But I think it's for when they're in rowdy groups and trying to intimidate other competitors.
Yeah, it's like
But this,
you
oh,
didn't
go
put
ahead.
it there on purpose, but like if you need to, you can use it in a pinch.
Right.
It's
And that's the
slicey.
thing. When I was talking about rowdy groups, I mean, they would get bloody and you could see where they were scratched up. They'd come up to breathe and you could see, gouges in their pectoral fins and stuff like that. So the intent was never to hurt. Or it appears like the intent was never to harm, just to, kind of
It's like a little
scare, willed
slap
off.
between
Yeah.
polite people. So this is a good question from the chat. Chris is asking, do whales jump out of the water to get the barnacles off them?
I don't, my gut tells me no. I think that they like the barnacles there and they only grow in specific areas. Although we do think, I think there's a couple different reasons, honestly, why they breach. Anytime I've been in the water after a humpback whale has breached, there's skin, like little skin flaps everywhere. So it might be a way to get rid of some of that dead skin. One of our ideas as to why they go down into warmer water to mate and give birth, because they don't have to. I mean, they're full of blubber. They don't have to go somewhere warm. But we think it's like a cleaning station. So all of the, not necessarily parasites, but just all the stuff that grow on humpback whales in colder water dies once they get to hot, warmer water. And then vice versa. Then they go back up and all the stuff that grows on them in the hotter or in the warmer water. So it's a cleaning station. So, they have all these dead skin cells. I've also seen a humpback. I've been in the water with a female that breached. And as she was coming up, the underside, which we're looking at right now, those are her ventral pleats. And those are what expand when she eats. Those will fill up with water and then she'll squeeze it and all the water will come out of her baleen and she'll have a mouthful of fish. She was covered in remora fish, which are the fish that stick. They're like sucker fish. And after she breached, they weren't on her anymore. So it might be a way to get those pesky things off. I know as a diver, I've had a remora try to attach itself to my head.
God.
And it's pretty annoying. There's also, and I think there's truth to this as well, because they are so acoustic. If you can think of a 30-ton animal coming out of the water, like 80 to 90% out of the water and then crashing back down, that makes a pretty loud noise. So it might be a way to communicate something. Generally, a lot of times I think it's for fun. And there are definitely times when you see a calf like breach for one of the first times, and then it just like does it again and again and again for 15 or 20 minutes, just over and over again, because it's like, whoa, this is awesome.
Yeah.
I think there are times, especially when they do, because humpbacks are known for, one, their song, and two, their breaching. Their spinning head breach is one of, I would say, one of the most amazing natural things that an animal or a creature does. But they also do a chin breach, and they do a head breach, and they do a tail breach. There's all these different kinds of breaches and all these reasons why they do them in certain areas. Like a chin breach makes a lot of noise. That's where they they go straight up, like, maybe just past their pectoral fins don't really come out, but their head comes out, and they cup themselves and they slap back down, and it makes this incredibly loud sound, and it takes way less energy than doing a spinning head breach. But all of them, I think it's one or a combination of all those things.
That is amazing that there's that many possible reasons too, and that you know them all. And this is such a great time maybe to tell the story of when you were saving a whale and what happened afterwards.
Yeah, so it was a learning experience, and we learned probably how not to do things in the safest manner. And then we went to the Center for Coastal Studies and we learned the way to do them in a safer manner. But anyways, it was we were actually with the animal communicators that week.
Oh, wow.
And it was the first day. We went out there, we left Saturday night, we got out there Sunday. Sunday's always a half day. So, You know, you have to do an orientation, get people into the water, teach them how to do stuff, eat lunch, and then you go out in the boat. And it's usually just a couple of hours just to try to, you know, give people a taste of what the week is going to have in store. And almost immediately we saw there was a whale that was, I mean, it looked sick. It, like this picture of the whale that you have right now, you know, it's black. This whale was gray, you know, like a faded black. It was labored. When they come to the surface, they exhale, and when he would exhale, it was a male. When he would exhale, it just was, the whole thing was labored, and we could tell that there was something wrong. It just felt, you could just look by observation. Yeah. So we made our way out there, and he was super apprehensive. Like, it's the closer the boats, the tenders that we went out on got to him, he would move off. But he was so exhausted as well. So we reached a point where, and then we saw there was like, I can't even remember, let's just say 50 or 80 feet of netting behind him.
Oh my God.
And you could just tell, like, he was struggling to stay to the surface. He was struggling to breathe. And so we had to have a discussion as to, should we put ourselves in the water to help him? Every time we get close, he tries to go away. So are we going to, like, in trying to help him, are we going to endanger him further? And I think that the conclusion was, he's probably not going to make it with this on there anyways. So yeah, so we went out there. He got really tired. We were able to get some people into the water, and he fought. As soon as he felt that, as soon as we were able to get the netting, and he felt that kind of tug or that pressure or that weight, freaked out and started going even faster. He had to hang on, being pulled behind this whale. But finally, one of the guys, Tom, in fact, was able to cut some of it off. And he was just going really hard, and it was just rough work. He's being dragged behind the boat. Finally gets to cut some of it off, not all of it, but a good chunk of it. And when that whale realized that that weight was gone and kind of what we were doing, he stopped. He got really calm. And he let 3 guys in the water next to, it was wrapped around his pectoral fin. It was through his mouth and his baleen. It was wrapped around his body, around his fluke, and then trailing off behind him. And it had, so anyways, I'm jumping ahead. So they cut off as much as they could. They couldn't get everything off, but they got a significant amount off. And it took hours. It was exhausting. So they free him, and he leaves, and everybody decides, like, well, we weren't going to get any more off anyways. That's about as much as we could do. Within 90 seconds, a whale, not this whale, but a whale breaches, and everyone's like, oh, and then another whale over here breaches, and then another. For like 5 minutes, there were whales breaching all over the place. It was incredible. And having the animal communicators on there, like, they were just like, oh, he's just telling everybody what you guys did, and everybody's celebrating. And it was, believe what you want, but the facts are that whale was entangled. And after we disentangled it, not only did he stop to let us do it more, but there was more breaching in a 5-minute period of time from, 10 or 15 different whales than I had seen before or after.
I love it so much. They were, yeah, he told them all, and they were like, woohoo, like, Fred got free.
Yeah, exactly. So then cool. Just to put a cap on that, we got the line all up on the boat and got it out of the water. And we noticed that there were buoys on it. And I think when we got back into shore that week, we traced it back, and they came from like Nova Scotia or something. And I'm definitely not saying anything against using nets for fishing or anything like that. But in my mind, what it tells me is that whale got entangled somewhere in the North Atlantic and made it thousands of miles down to the Silver Bank, dragging. And it was heavy. It was like, it was lead line. It was a lead line wrapped up in some kind of plastic or fabric or something like that, but it was heavy. We cut just a couple feet off to use in presentations, and it's, you know, it's a couple pounds in just like a short amount of line. So to think all the line that was wrapped around him and the 50 or 80 feet behind him is,
Oh.
so.
If you can imagine carrying around your a bunch of weight and like trying to walk from here to like, you know, some states away. For like 6 weeks. 24 hours a day. Oh,
I mean, it's not funny, but
it's so cool that you guys were able to help him and that they all responded like that. Like, is that the most whales you've seen breaching at once ever?
For sure.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and it wasn't like close to us. It was just like on the horizon and around the distance. So here's a whale doing a little chin breach right here.
Celebrating.
Yeah.
So then that also kind of, you know, proves to anyone who wants to let it prove that one of the reasons they do it is to celebrate. Or, you know, to show joy. To play.
Yeah. Again, it's one of those things like I could never say this is a fact. It's just, again, through a decade of observation.
Ooh, what a good picture with the light coming in like that. The baby and the mama.
Sometimes you get lucky. So where the calf is going down right now, that's actually where the mother's mammary glands are. And she expresses milk. It's like a really thick, like think about cottage cheese, but like 80 times thicker than that. Wow. She expresses that out into the water, and then the calf goes down and kind of gobbles it up. And that's where it learns how to use its ventral pleats and to siphon water out of its baleen and, you know, not swallow a bunch of salt water when it's eating.
Cool.
So a lot of people come into it thinking like, oh, the whales have nipples and they just kind of suckle, but you know, humpback whales, as far as we can tell, do not have nipples.
It's so weird to think that you could do this mammalian thing but underwater, you know. I just think of like the milk would just all like, but they made it like thick and heavy so that they can actually get it. And I know this is totally pointless and off topic, but it's weird to me that water looks the same under at the surface as it does above at the surface.
Like you could flip that picture and yep.
It's weird.
Yeah.
Oh, there's little fishies down by the
it is
where the cottage cheese comes out.
So, that's probably why it's down there. It's probably like, I mean, and not only remoras, but there are other feeder fish down there that follow the calf, especially anytime it's going to go nurse, because there's always going to be some, it's not going to get all of it. And so then there's those little feeder fish that come in and pick up the pieces, or especially like nip at their, not nip, I'm not going to say that, but you know, kind of clean off their lips and the corners of their mouth.
It's like how humans have dogs and they follow around the toddler who's going to drop all the food.
Exactly. They're smart. They're like, oh.
Same. Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful.
So that's again, that's a mother who's stationary. We're in really shallow water there. You can actually see the coral head right underneath. Oh, yeah. Again, I point like it makes a difference. But you can see the coral head right underneath the mother's jaw. And so the calf has just come up to take a couple breaths, and then it will go underneath the mother, like usually right underneath her head, between her head and her pectoral fins. And they rest there because, you know, these are mammals. They're not fish. They're filled with air. And I don't know if you've ever tried, or anybody listening has ever tried to dive down, like just you take a deep breath of air and then you try to swim to the bottom of the swimming pool or in a lake or something. Maybe you can make it, but your body naturally floats back up. The same with calves. They haven't figured out a way to use their buoyancy. So they have to go underneath their mother so that they can stay down. If the mother moves, then the calf just naturally kind of floats to the top. Whereas adults, and this is a fascinating thing, and I have no idea how they do this, but they'll come to the surface, they'll take 3 or 4 big breaths of air, they'll go back down, and especially if they're sleeping, like they're not moving, they're just kind of like this one, this mother is just in one spot. They can stay down for like 20 minutes, and they'll stay like in the same depth. They'll rarely move. They'll move their pectoral fins a little bit to kind of, but again, if you can picture yourself being in the water, you usually move. Like there's movement underwater. They can stay still. They can stay down like a submarine. And then when they want to come up, it's just like they make a conscious decision to come up. I guess they probably rearrange the air spaces in their body and they float to the surface. It's incredible how long they can stay down with a lung, with their lungs full of air.
It's crazy to and get that reminder too. Like you said, they're not fish, they're mammals. And sorry, I just made this horribly racist symbol.
I see your coding right there.
Just by the way. But
It's
that
very subtle.
it is so weird to think of that they're mammals and not fish because they spend their whole lives in the water. But
Yeah.
I remember seeing the babies like you're describing, like not having that control and not having that confidence. Like I remember one specifically where I was like, he doesn't even want to come out to go up to the surface because it's like annoying or something, or
Yeah.
he has to like try to figure out how to do it. He's just like doesn't want to, and he just stays
And they
there
have
forever.
they have different personalities, and you can be with a calf who's super interested in you, and then 7 minutes later they could care less, and they or you'll have a calf, again, like you said, they'll be under their mother, and they know that you're up there, and they'll peek out a little bit and they'll see you and they're like, oh, but I have to breathe, and so they have to come up. And but that's the thing, like, I should probably get into this a little bit. Like when we're on the surface and we see a whale, first of all, it's not like there's hundreds of whales all over the place. There's hundreds of whales in like 100 square foot area, square mile area, not square foot.
That'd be crazy if it was square feet.
So there are definitely times where you don't see any whales. Like you can be out for hours and not even see a blow or anything. So part of what we did was we'd watch for whale blows. We'd time them to see if they're moving or if they're staying in one place. If they're staying in one place, we'd start to approach. If as we approached that whale moved, we'd give it some time. If it didn't move very far, then we'd try it again. If it moved again after 2 times, then we'd let it go and we'd go do something else. So there's this whole process of finding a whale that wants to interact with us, because that was the point. If you find a whale that wants to interact with you, then you're set. You're set for the whole morning. Everybody's happy. You've had an amazing day. But you'd have to work at it. And if they didn't want it, then we wouldn't push it. So you'd have to find, generally a mother and a calf. Those were the ones that we looked for. A mother who was comfortable, who needed a rest, and was confident that her calf could go to the surface without her and not get harmed. Because again, you have to think of just if you're just talking about an animal instinct is to protect your young, and putting it in danger is, no animal mother is going to do that. So there is an issue of trust anytime you're in the water with the mother and calf, and that mother lets that calf come up and breathe around you. And sometimes the calf would be close, and sometimes the calf would go far away and always come back to its mom. You always stick with the mom. You never chase the calf. You never chase anything. But if you stuck with the mom and the mom trusted you, then, you were good to go. So there really was, in all seriousness, when I was in the water and because excuse me, we timed the whale to, see how long it was underwater. And then we'd send in one person, generally called that person the scout. And the scout would go in, and if the whale moved, then, that was it. But if the whale stayed stationary, I would always position myself as close as I could above it. I'd watch for little signs. If it started moving around, I knew I was getting nervous, so I'd back up a little bit. And once everything was calm, then I would give the signal. Other people would slowly slip into the water and come up to me. And then we would just kind of sit there and observe. And so it was forming a level of trust. Like, you can trust me to make sure that nobody does anything. And I need to trust you that you're not going to come up here and breach on us or slap us with your fluke or something like that. And once that bond was made, like, those were the great encounters happened after that.
It's so awesome. Yeah, and I know they sometimes maybe even seem to like recognize you guys from previous years, because they would like come up and be like, hey, okay, here I am, like, I'm gonna go to bed, here's my baby. Like, you guys entertain it, right?
Some of these stories sound like they're made up, but we were in the water once. We were with a mother and calf having this great encounter. And again, my coworker Denise called to me in the water. She said, there's another mother and calf coming. Like, she's on the surface. She's looking for any changes, making sure everybody's safe. Because if like whales start breaching, or if a rowdy group is coming through, everybody has to get out of the water. So that's part of the driver's job, is just to survey and make sure everything's cool. So she saw this mother and calf coming, and they were coming pretty fast. She said, there's another mother and calf coming. The mother and calf that we were with moved. The mother and calf that was coming came right underneath us. The mother just stopped. I'm not joking. She stopped right underneath us. And then her calf came up and started doing her thing. And the other mother and calf moved off. And then I want to say like 20 minutes later, the mother and calf came back and that mother and calf moved off. And they did that for like the whole first half of the morning.
Wow.
You know, we would do, if I was on a boat and we were having a really good encounter, we'd always call the other boat to come over because we wanted everybody to have an opportunity to have an experience. So you do it a couple times, make sure that the whale's comfortable with the group of people. And then, you know, once that group had their thing down, we'd call in another group and we'd do this thing, we'd switch out. Our boat would get its people on, we'd back off, the new boat would come in, their people would get into the water. You do a breathing cycle. So once the whale comes up to breathe, they generally move a little bit and then they go back down. So once the whale comes up to breathe, the people would get out of the water. The whale would take a couple breaths, go back down. The next boat would come in. We'd call that switching out. This was an example of whales switching out. We stayed there, but one whale group would come in and then they would leave, and another whale group would come in and then they'd leave. And they just did that for like 3 hours.
That's so amazing.
I just almost ripped my earphones out again. Yeah, it's just
very expressive.
Yeah. But it's stuff like that. Like I would never even think to make that story up. And then when it was happening, I was like, this isn't real.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like these whales know that. I think this is the example I used to. I was like, it seemed like the mother was exhausted, had an experience with us in the past and knew it's like, okay, these people are cool. I'm going to nap. My kid can run around and do whatever. And because once the calf starts moving, then the mother has to follow it. So you can picture like even a human mothers, like their children are running around. It's exhausting. If your child can just be in one spot, you can sit down, drink some coffee, relax for like 5 minutes. Even 5 minutes is enough.
Absolutely. It totally seems like that to me. Like, you know, year after year after year, Tom comes back. They have these same boats, same shapes, like same vibes, whatever. And they're like, okay, I know this. This is cool.
Oh, it was a huge deal when he changed out engines, like, because, you know, you get normal wear and tear after a certain amount of time. You want a new engine, but each engine has its own little signature. And so there was really like a conversation of, yeah, we need new engines, but the whales are used to the sound of our engines. And if we switch that up, is that going to change anything? It turned out it didn't change anything in a noticeable way for us, but they're so acoustic. You have to think about those kind of things.
Yeah. Oh, I'm glad it didn't.
Yeah. So that's a picture of a calf doing it's a little tail slap.
It's so cute.
But you can tell, or I can tell, you can tell it's not a newborn calf. It's probably actually a yearling, just like a cat or a whale that's 1 or 2 years old, because it's still got a little gray on the underside of its fluke.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas like a newborn, it's totally gray. The white comes in. It's really interesting. It's like a Polaroid picture in a way. It's the pattern is always there, but over time the gray goes away, and depending on the whale, it's either darker or there's more black or more white, and each one is different.
It's so crazy, and I didn't know each one was different until you shared that, or maybe taught about it when we were on the boat or whatever. But then the few flukes I got to see in the pictures that you showed, it's like they are very unique. It's like a fingerprint.
Yep.
But wait,
I mean, that's the number one way that they identify whales and lineages.
This is the picture that Allegra must have used for her watercolor.
Is that the one that's right behind me? Oh, it is. Yeah, it's right there.
That's cool. Yeah, and by the way, Allegra Rose Brown, what is her site?
AllegraRoseBrown.com.
AllegraRoseBrown.com. I'll put it in the chat for people. She's painted a couple of these humpback whales and really beautiful watercolor, and all her art is amazing. So check her out anyway. But
yeah, I was really
greeting cards with really cool watercolor whales. Like that's the place.
I've been I feel so fortunate that like my wife was able to come out one week, and you and my family, you know, my sister and my mom were able to come out. Because again, it kind of ties back. It's so hard to tell these stories and let people know. It's like we've said a couple times, you kind of have to go do it. I'm so glad you guys, everybody that's close to me has gotten the chance to do it, which means a lot to me.
It's very special. Yeah, our whole family basically was there at one time, which was amazing.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. Yeah, this picture is just rad. It's just such good. They're just such good composition, such good shape.
Amateur. That is that's a calf. You can actually see the blurry picture of the mother in the lower corner there. So another thing about the humpback whales, and one of the ways you can tell the difference between like the Pacific humpback and the Atlantic humpback is that pectoral fin. The Atlantic humpback whale, the pectoral fin's like their arm.
Okay.
It's white on the top. They're all white on the underside. All humpback whales have white on the, well, I shouldn't say all because there's variations, but majority of humpback whales have white on the underside. But the Atlantic humpback whale has white on the top, whereas the Pacific ones are black, which is super useful for what we were doing in the Dominican Republic, because the water quality, not quality, the visibility wasn't always great. And sometimes when I got into the water, the only thing that I could see, the only way I even knew that there was a whale down there, was the sun reflecting off of the white parts of their pectoral fins. Whereas if we were in the Pacific and it was black, there could be a whale 20 feet below you, you wouldn't even see it.
Oh, wow. Yeah, and it seems like evolutionarily, I wonder if the Pacific whale then is like, I guess they don't have really any predators though, do they?
Just man.
Just man.
The calves, they do have predators, mostly orcas or killer whales.
Dicks, man. I love orcas. We grew up in the Pacific Northwest. Like, they're awesome creatures. I have great respect and love for them, but they are the dicks of the ocean.
Yeah, my wife doesn't like them either. I don't mind them, but they are. It's just as an example of that. They will work really hard to separate the mother and the calf, and then they will keep the calf down so that it can't breathe, and then they will eat its tongue, and that's it.
Just the tongue. Yeah. Wasteful
like
bastards.
Yeah.
And then they do that thing where they like find a sea lion and they'll like flip them back and forth between each other. Have you seen that? Like, that's
I have.
The poor seal's still alive, and they're like playing badminton with him. I'm like, God, you guys
I know
are
they get
awful.
such a bad reputation. I don't know.
They are very sweet, intelligent whales too. They just don't respect other species.
That's okay. I can agree with that.
Predators.
I can agree with that. But yeah, besides orcas, when the calves, it's mostly man. And that's a calf doing a tail breach while its mother is doing a fin slap. And the mother was doing the fin slap first, and then the calf was like, I can make noise too, and started fin slapping. So it's pretty cute.
So cute. I know when we first came in, we got in the middle of the night, right? You go like for many hours out into the ocean and in the middle of the night, and you're asleep, and you wake up and you're in this beautiful place where the coral reefs come up and all the whales are. And I went up on one of the decks to have coffee or something, and that was the first thing I saw was a big mother whale came up, and both her fins at once she was doing, and I was like, oh, she's welcoming me.
I honestly don't doubt it. When they do that, they're laying on you showed a picture before where we could see the ventral pleats. That was a whale whose belly was to the surface. So this whale right here, she's kind of on her side. You can actually see her eye if you went to her pectoral fin and just moved out a little bit in the other direction. But there's a little bump that's her eye. Anyways, so she's on her side doing it, but they will also get on their back. So their belly is like kind of out of the water, and then they will slap down like this. They have an amazing ability, like their rotation or mobility of their pectoral fins is incredible. One of the reasons that they can do the breaches that they do, especially the spinning head breach, their pectoral fins are about 1/3 the length of their body, which is way longer than any other ocean mammal. If you look at right whales or blue whales or and so they have, and they can move them. I'll say their movability as they can turn on a dime, like their ability to glide and turn and do these underwater ballerina moves is incredible.
Well, that one of the experiences I described earlier where one like came up and her fin went under me and her eye was like right in front of me. She was facing the opposite direction, kind of nose into like a wall, if I'm remembering right, of coral. And I remember thinking like, are we like trapping her in there? Like she has to like back out somehow or like how's she gonna do this? But she just like joink and like turned around and left. I was like, oh wow. I didn't know they were so like nimble for such a giant creature.
Yeah, and it just, again, it's like you imagine a bus trying to move, except it's not. It's almost snake-like how they can turn in such a small area. I unfortunately don't have any pictures or videos to go with this next story that I'm going to tell, but one of the most amazing things that I have seen a humpback whale do is what we call dancing.
Yeah.
And it's almost always two whales, generally a male and a female, and we say that it's a pre-mating ritual. I've never seen a mother and a calf. I've never seen a mother do the dancing behavior. So we just imagine that it's a pre-mating ritual, but it's this thing that they do where they're not synchronized necessarily, but they are moving together both underwater and above water. I don't know when it comes up, but eventually we're going to get to a picture where there's two whales that are coming up at the surface at the same time. And you don't have to race through to find it. But so if you see them doing it underwater, it's like they obviously know that you're there, but they could care less. And they're just kind of doing their own thing. And it is a dance. It's movement based on other movement. And they will come to the surface and they'll go back down and they'll swim and they'll intertwine. It's incredibly beautiful. It's like when people have been out and then they come back the next year or later that same season, people that we call veterans. That's like what they want. I've seen them breach, I've heard them sing. Now I want to see them dance. And it's like when you get a chance to do that, I find that more. But I think the song is incredible, and it shows their intellect and their ability to communicate. But the fact that they dance, it's so hard to explain. And I was incredibly fortunate. There was one day where it was too rough to go out on the boats, and so I put on some scuba gear and I was going to go check the mooring because we were swinging around all over the place. And if the mooring breaks, there's coral heads everywhere, and there's actually it's almost all the way underwater now, but there is a sunken ship. But there's a couple sunken ships out there actually. But there's one that you used to be able to snorkel through. It was a big, huge like tanker container ship. It just ran aground or onto the coral. But anyways, so we needed to check the mooring anyways, and we weren't going to go out on the tender. So I went down there. There was another coworker that came with me. And then there was a woman, one of my most favorite guests. Her name is Susan, and she would come out a couple of weeks every single year. She's just amazing. Very empathetic person. Would also call herself kind of an animal communicator. Swims with dolphins in Hawaii. So it was always awesome having her out because some of the best experiences I ever had were when she was part of the group. So all three of us are diving, checking out the mooring. The visibility isn't great. It's not dark, but it was actually morning, but it was really hard to see. So I'm following this line from the bow of the boat. It goes about 80 feet underwater. Check the mooring. Okay, the mooring's good. Let's go back up. And as we're going up, I see the white of a pectoral fin. It probably wasn't 5 feet from my face, but it felt like it was 5 feet. It was like the last. I didn't expect it. I didn't hear them clicking or anything. I know that I'm in waters where humpback whales are, but I'd never seen one while I was diving. So that in itself, I was just like, whoa. And then it was doing this movement, like it was dancing. And so I just kind of watched it, and it would like turn its head down. And so then I turned my head down, and then it went on its side, and I went on my side. I'm like, oh, I'm dancing with this whale. This is so amazing. And I went to turn to see if the other two people, were still with me or if they had gone up. And when I turned, each one had a whale. There were 3 whales dancing. There were 3 people on scuba, and we spent 45, 50 minutes.
Wow.
And then they, it wasn't like one whale was with me the entire time. And they would start to do their thing. They were coming to the surface, so the actual people, the guests on the boat, were able to look over the sides and at least see them on the surface doing it. But yeah, for 45 minutes, I was underwater, in like 50 feet of water, just watching these 3 whales dance with each other, dance with us. Um, the woman who was with us, Susan, I could hear her laughing underwater with her regulator in her mouth. Um, it was that's a perfect example of something that's so hard to describe to people.
Yeah.
I mean, even when we got to the surface, people were like, "Oh my God, that was amazing! Was it amazing? What was it like?" Like, I didn't feel like I was on. I don't know. I wasn't paying attention to anything.
Yeah.
I would look at my air to make sure I had enough air, and then I would just kind of watch. And it's like I wasn't, almost like a dream, or like when you're in the dream, everything is so vivid and perfect, but then when you wake up, it starts to kind of go away. It's like even now that I tell this story, I've told the story enough to where it's ingrained in my brain, but I can never explain that that feeling or that connection or why those whales were doing that right there at that specific place at that specific time with us in the water. Um, it's incredible.
Because they loved you. Because that is exactly, I feel like the one of the characteristics, one of the main characteristics of any like true spiritual experience is like you can't give it to someone else. They have to either do it themselves or try to just be like, wow, that sounds really rad. I kind of like can picture, like, but I'll never know. You'll never know until you know. You have gnosis of whale dancing.
And that's, again, this is going to go to something that we kind of started off the conversation with about, I mean, you called me a whale expert, and it's really, really kind of you.
It's true.
How do I finish the sentence? There are definitely people out there that know on paper more about what a whale eats or how its stomachs work or its gestation period and stuff like that, which, like I said before, that is important. But it's, instead of what you said earlier of like, if everybody on the planet could get in the water and swim with whales, how different things would be. If everybody on the planet who wanted to, who were open to it, who even wanted, like, were even curious about it, could get into the water and have that kind of an experience and like just have that connection, just that like one 20-minute period of time or one day or that 1 week of being away from everything, being literally out in the middle of the ocean. You can't see land. There's no internet. There's no TV. I mean, there was TV because they had DVDs and stuff, but you know what I mean? It's like you're so removed from everything that kind of pollutes our minds and makes us focused on these things that aren't necessarily always super important to be focused on, and just commune with nature. And I talk about that when I talk about, whales, like we're doing right now. I try to bring that up and then also point out, it's like, yeah, if you can swim with the whales, that's amazing. But really, if you can go out into the forest and sit down for an hour and not have your phone and be quiet, like just shh, and let the birds start going and let the squirrels start doing stuff and butterflies will come out, and there's so much importance to that, to having that connection, or at least trying to have that connection with nature around you.
People are going to think that I told you to say that because I say that all the time. But
do you?
I think it's just because we grew up playing in nature and climbing trees and like being outside and camping and knowing that it's so awesome and it's a completely different, I go camping for like 3 days at least. My whole like self is reset because you're just outside of this electric box that we live in, and your box is much less electric than other people's boxes, but
we try. I mean, we really try.
Yeah, because I don't know, if people haven't watched the previous episode, they might not know that you basically live in an off-grid sort of cabin in the woods. So like epically awesome. But yeah, so you even have it like a little bit clearer than most people, but it really is. It's like the way to just get a really easy reset. And maybe you can't have this experience of diving with whales if you don't make it to aquatic adventures someday, but like you said, you could go out and who knows, like a little coyote might come up to you, or a little owl might come sit next to you, or who knows what. It's just as awesome, honestly, depending on what's going on, right?
Well, and now that I'm thinking about it, there's something that you said that kind of sparked this in my brain, so I'm gonna see where it goes. But when you said that we grew up where we grew up and we played outside, and I was like, yeah, that's true. It's been a lot of time playing outside. And yet this was never something that I aspired to do, but I was able to end up doing it. And I wonder if, like, if you go out into the forest and you're like, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to see a fox. That's what I want. As opposed to, I'm just going to sit here and whatever happens, happens. Because that was kind of my attitude once I realized that our interactions with the whales was on their terms. I had no idea what to expect. Like, what are you supposed to expect? You know, I wasn't a person who spent my time saving up money to do this. This was never a goal of mine. It was just something that I was so fortunate to be a part of. And I think there has to be something to that expectation versus just being open and appreciating whatever it is that happens, because amazing stuff can happen when you aren't paying attention. And now, sorry, now I'm going to sound like a super crazy person, but
I don't think that's possible on this show, but go for it.
One of the most vivid dreams that I've ever had that I will never forget included that woman that I was talking about that we were scuba diving with, Susan. She was in the dream. We were sitting on the bottom of the ocean, and I can't remember what we were talking about, but in the dream, we had been down there for a while. And I suddenly realized that I didn't have a scuba tank on, and I wasn't like breathing, you know, air. And I turned to her and I said, how are we underwater? This is impossible. And in my dream, she said, it's amazing the things that we can do when we forget that they are impossible. And it's, I don't think about that all the time, but like every once in a while, it just comes back. I'm like, I love that saying. I wish I could. I mean, can I quote that? Can I quote what a dream person said?
Yes.
It's amazing the things that we can do when we forget that they're impossible.
I'm writing it down right now.
Yeah. Now that I say that, I'm scared that somebody's going to Google and be like, dummy, that's what Neo said in the second Matrix movie.
Yeah, but see, that's the thing. Like, your subconscious maybe did pick that up from somewhere or something, but that doesn't mean it wasn't a very powerful message that came from, you know, the archetype of Susan or whatever.
That's true. I'll take that.
That's so awesome. It's amazing the things we can do when we forget that they're impossible. It's such a beautiful place that we have to probably start to draw things to a close anyway. And I love that message, you know, and I feel like the whales would say that too. I really feel like, I know that I can't prove it, but that whales are like these like interdimensional, like psychic creatures or something. I'm just like, there's something bigger going on. Like when you're with them, next to them, you're like, you know, like you were talking about, even watching the dancers go by, or like you feel this like love. I think they love each other deeply, and you can feel it. They're just like exuding it. And I'm like, there's actually this concept that someone brought up a while ago that maybe whales are like almost like the subconscious, or like the record keepers, or like the brain of the entire planet. You know, they're like the consciousness of the planet made into like a physical form. And I'm like, I feel like that's true.
We definitely had people on the boat that would say that too. Like, really? There's got to be something to the way that they swim, the routes that they take, just the way that they communicate in general, that they are secret keepers, or they, you know, there's stuff. I mean, the next time I come on, I can tell you there's like hollow earth, like people that came on about like their hollow earth theories about whales and their interdimensional space whales. And there's very little that we didn't hear or people speculate. And that's one of the fun things about engaging with all these different people in this one specific area, because you can have people who don't believe at all that you can communicate with animals. And then you can have people that 100% believe that you can, and they can go out and have the same experience, and at the end of the day say like, I don't necessarily believe exactly what you believe, but there was definitely something there, which I think we need more of. We need more of like, I don't necessarily have to agree 100% with your idea for us to have a shared experience and appreciate the same thing.
Yeah, and you don't have to find the final answer. You can wonder, like, is it like that show in Magicians where the whales are like carving sigils into the sea bottom, and that's what's
Right.
keeping the earth stable or keeping Cthulhu like trapped somewhere? I didn't actually watch the show, but I saw that one part of that one episode, and I was like, wow, I love that idea.
Yeah. And
Who knows?
it's like I said about the song. It's like some of these things we're never going to know, and it's almost better. I mean, just because you know something, like especially when you know something, like the mystery and the magic is kind of gone when you find out how something works, or the first time I'm going to bring it to movies for a second, but the first time you realize that like, oh, that isn't Indiana Jones actually doing that, that's an actor and a
Yeah.
stunt person, and this is all trick photography. But at a point you don't think that, you're just like, this is magical. And so
Yes.
I don't want to know some of these answers. This is a really good example of, this was a very shallow person, or not
Very
person, a
shallow.
very shallow part of
Very
the
shallow
ocean.
person. Screw that person.
That actually, speaking of Susan, that's Susan.
Oh, hi, Susan.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a mother calf and an escort, and they were in the very shallow part
Wow.
of the reef. You can only really go in on certain conditions, because if the wind's blowing the wrong way, you can get pushed in the coral. We don't want to trap them into the coral either. We want to give them a way to leave if they want to. But yeah, I like this photograph because you can see, I mean, that whale that's closest to the surface, from its pectoral to its other pectoral, is probably 40 feet.
Wow.
And so, yeah, 50 feet of water maybe.
Yeah, that's super shallow. That was one of the things that I did enjoy, and I know some people in the chat have said it too. Like, oh, I don't know if I could go like swim in the ocean, and I had the exact same like thing because one of the times I had snorkeled, I was having this great time, having this great time, having this great time, and then all of a sudden I looked behind me at like the extent of the ocean, and I was like, oh my god! I like ran back to the boat or swam back to the boat and got out, and I was like, not really comfortable anymore. Like I saw the infinitude and I'm not happy with it. Like I think I'll stay here. And I thought I would have that when I got out there with the whales, and that I wouldn't be able to get in the water because it would be just this endless. But I just like put that. I was like, whatever's behind me, I don't need to worry about. I'm just gonna look in front of me, and I can almost always see the ground. And even when I can't see it, I know it's like just beyond where I can see, and like it's all good. And I just kind of. And once your first whale comes, you're like you said, you're just like in that moment and nothing else matters anyway. And I think then I was just like, I don't even care. I'll get right in the water every time.
I mean, my wife is a good example of that too, because she was very apprehensive when she came out. And one of the things she said that will always stick with me, she's like, once I got into the water and I'd be nervous, but then I'd see the whale and then I would calm down because I didn't want to interrupt the whale. Like I didn't want my erratic behavior to bother them. So out of like respect, I'm going to be quiet and still. And then once the experience is over, I'm going to swim back to the boat as fast as I can. I'm going to get out of the water.
Yeah.
So there's all different levels of, and honestly, we did. I know I told that story in the very beginning about the man who waited all week and finally got in, but we had weeks where people just didn't, they just wanted to be on the top side and watch it from there. So
whatever your comfort level is.
I say you go out there, and then if you want to get in the water, you do it.
Oh, I'm sad we didn't even get through all of the pictures, but I don't want to like rush through them just at the end just to like show them. But was there any specific one you wanted to get to before?
No, they're all good.
Amazing.
I can come back someday, and
yes,
we can talk about the more mystical ideas of humpback whales and look at my amazing amateur photographs.
They're pretty rad for amateur photographs. I'm sure there's like, professional photographers who would be like, why him and not me? But still, like, they're pretty awesome.
Seen some pretty good ones, but yeah, I mean, even just seeing a picture that I like, when you look at pictures that you took, you can associate that with the time. It's like all of those pictures are from different years, but I can remember each one, where I was, what the whale was doing. So it's kind of fun.
It is cool. I know I have the video that I took, which is on my YouTube if anybody wants to go watch it. But I think it's not very exciting for anyone that's not me because it's not very well done and it is like moving around and whatever. And I have to say, my aunt always tells me, you know, because she knows me and she knows I'm like, ooh, take a picture of this. Ooh, take a picture of that. Like, all the things are cool. Take all the pictures. And she says, like, Lindsay, just remember it's cool to also like be there and put the camera down sometimes. And actually, the camera that I had been using on that trip ran out of batteries. And that's when I like so stopped and just sort of let it go and be in the moment more than I had been. And that's when that baby and I had that interaction. So I was like, I don't even really want to take pictures anymore.
Yeah.
Because it's stopping me from interacting with the whales. Yeah.
I can almost, again, I can't guarantee anything, but I'm fairly certain that had you had a camera, that experience wouldn't have happened.
Yeah. I think that's true.
It's one of the reasons, I mean, honestly, the only reason I had a camera was because Tom, the guy I worked for, gave it to me. And he said, I want you, you know, if you're going to work for me, I want you to be able to take pictures that we can use in newsletters and stuff. And because I said that to photographers too. It's like, you're so lost in your viewfinder that you're not, it's good advice. It's nice to take photos, but you also need to step back and like appreciate exactly where you are, why you are, and
not have the distraction.
Yeah,
it's really true. Well, I know I want to at least encourage people again to go to aquatic adventures, not because either you or I gets anything out of it, but because I know how good it is for people who go, and I know how good it is for the whales.
Yes, I always say, even if I didn't work for him, I would recommend Tom and Aquatic Adventures. I mean, he's the guy who kind of pioneered it. He does a lot for the conservation, both in the Center for Coastal Studies and down in the Dominican Republic. And just he is a man who loves his job, and his job has been connected with whales for almost 30 years. If you're going to go, that's the way to go.
I agree. And I also want you to share with people where they can find you and Not New Releases and what the best ways are to connect and find things and all of that good stuff.
Thank you. Yeah, so I am on Twitter because I'm super fancy. I'm on Instagram as well. They're both under BBS Presents. So that's Bravo Sector. I don't know. BBS Presents for both of them. And then Not New Releases is on like anywhere that you would find podcasts. It's there. I don't have a website, so I'm not going to say that I have a website because I don't.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're into movies, it has nothing to do with what we've just spent the last hour and a half or 2 hours talking about. But it's fun. If you like movies, if you want to hear not the plot and the synopsis and what's wrong with movies, but instead what's right with them and why movies are great, it's fun. We have fun doing it. We are not professionals at all. But if you like the sound of my voice, you can hear it even more.
Yes, it is really fun. It's fun to get nostalgic and like, to just, like you said, like have this break from like nitpicking everything. And we just have the most cynical culture and the most like, I don't know when it was that I noticed that like everything was just like, ooh, how snarky can we be? Like what's the next dig someone can get on someone? And I'm like, this is so dumb. Like, it's like a new level
of intelligence. Like, look how smart I am because I noticed that this sucks.
Right.
Like, I don't love everything. I don't love every movie, but even the movies I don't like, I'm not going to sit there and spend my time talking about why I don't like them.
It's such
a waste of time.
Yeah. You're like, this is your like lazy way of making yourself feel like you have done something, or I don't know. It's so stupid.
And the other thing, like one of the taglines of the podcast is join the discussion, because that's what I want to facilitate. Yeah. I like talking with my co-host Nino about these movies. I like talking with other people about the movies, like all the different theories and ideas, and especially when it's not based on what's wrong with this movie, but instead of what's right with this movie. Like, those are really fun conversations to be a part of. So
if someone has a movie in mind and they come and like tweet you a good enough like pitch, then maybe they can even come and chat with you.
Let's go. Yeah. Be my friend on my Twitters, and we can discuss movies.
Awesome. Well, what are your final thoughts that you might want to share, or anything that we didn't touch on that you want to get out there, or reflections?
So one of the week that you were on, there was a boy, and I can't remember how old he was, but if he was 12, maybe,
Yeah.
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 And one of the nights he asked a question, and he asked my opinion on, do I think that we should spend money exploring space or money exploring the ocean? And a lot of money is being spent exploring space. And if a private person wants to invest their own money and do that, what can I say about that? For us, I think we have such a magical, mystical, unknown, relatively unknown 75-80% of the world is covered under the ocean. Anytime somebody goes deep, they find new things and new organisms that are living next to vents of super hot water and gas, and like nobody could live here, and oh, these things are living down here. It's just, there's so much that we don't know. And whenever somebody tells me like, oh, we have to get off this planet because we've destroyed it and we need to go somewhere else, it's just, that's what sticks in my mind. It's like, maybe we can destroy the planet, that's a different discussion, but I think everything we need has been given to us and it's here. And if we don't waste a bunch of time trying to leave, but instead find out where we are, what we're living on, and what's underneath us, try to commune with that, we can probably be better off. So that's just, that's something I spend my time thinking about, is what is this need to leave instead of discover what's here?
So well said. If space is even real, who knows? But at least this we know is right here, and we have never even touched it. And yeah, who knows what's down there waiting for us to find it. So
we 100% know that the ocean is here.
That's true.
I have touched it. Yeah. I have touched it.
You've been an integral part of it. I love it. Well, fellow travelers of the path, it is a beautiful thing, and this has been your analog electric concentric dose of wisdom, according to friend of the whales, Brandt Brown of Not New Releases. Brandt, thank you so much for being here with us tonight.
Oh my! Honestly, it's a pleasure. It's an honor. I could talk about this forever. It's one of my favorite topics, so I really enjoy you giving the opportunity to come out and share, and hopefully spark some stuff in people, give them some ideas.
Excellent. We love it. I know people have really enjoyed this content as well, so they are very happy over there in the chat. And mystical magicians of the sea, or gentle giants of the mammalian world. Either way, whales will never fail to inspire our imagination and invite us to reflect upon our own ways. Are we as intelligent? Are we as far-reaching? Do we listen as well? Do we learn each other's songs and carry the melody through generations? Do we commit to our young so devotedly? Do we remember to dance with our lovers? When it is dark, do we find the smallest and most vulnerable near us and come to circle around them in protection? Perhaps we can take these lessons and learn to weave them into our own wanderings as we float through the waters of our life streams, and until we find buoyancy and levity within our ways. Travel well, aim for balance, and always look inside first.
I am sure that was beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. Come on, Rat Kings, it's the rap machine, yeah, check it, gray bearded pirate, my motherfucker unknown, yeah, come on, in the place with my fist up, meaning I resist the bullshit that they feed us and lead us. This is just a part of the process, man, just watch this, cause this shit's about to get crazy like a mosh pit. We lost it, toss it, let's start it again, cause now with technology, with smarter men and women, this is the beginning, not the end, and this is the message of hope that I send. Look on your TV, it's a culture of death. They'll keep on lying to the very last breath. We keep on striving and spreading the truth. It's hard to survive in this world for the youth. The door is closed, the old world is dead. Let's have an age of understanding instead. I'll include you and you include me. Let's see what we can build with some positivity. Let's go, you're moving too slow. let me see your hands if you know what I know. Come on.
Rap like mummy, ain't no dummy in my rhyming. Started flowing freestyling, now they rhyming loud silence. On with the violence, bodies piling with the gray-bearded pirate. On your TV in 4K 3D virtual reality. Casualty of urban warfare. I know but I'm not scared, just prepared and aware. Shining my light through the tunnel of hope. Into the rope, but I'ma give it one more pull. Till the family is full. Take the bull by the horns and lead it to the slaughter. That would be harder and you would be softer. Sometimes I'm a monster, and you forever imposter. With your champagne and lobster. This royalty, the way it was supposed to be. Hopefully the new door opens and the old one closes. With way more focus and growth to mold us. And the truth that they should have told us.
To them screens, it's a plot to drop the IQ. Fighting amongst each other over rulers that don't like you. Prefer us trapped in melancholy with the wood wands of holly. Suggestions that obliterate to camouflage the folly. Attempted mental robbery, executed sloppily. The paupers see this mockery and walk the talk with me. Put the hands up to touch the Akasha. Cause you know deep down there's something bigger than your wallet. Everyone got a gift, everyone got a light. They want you to forget that ish, cause they can't dim the bright. The positive vibration takes you past the sign shackles. From the sewers and the alleys into moving castles. Who these assholes really serving with an exposed Achilles surgeon around the corner lurking to prove ascension trumps perversion. Learn them to catch fish and unplug the signal. Show them the simpletons now build the fucking temples.